how's the neighborhood, Alex? Is it good for families? You got two problems in that one. Real estate agents need to avoid making assumptions about whether their clients have children, whether their clients are married, whether they plan to expand a family. Family status is a protected class by the Fair Housing Act. Saying anything related to their familial status is discriminatory and will deter their decision on housing. The fact that we use the word neighborhood in there can also be twisted in one direction or another. Not all had the opportunity to live in a neighborhood community. They may have just lived on a street. They may have lived rurally and not lived in a neighborhood at all. Some people may translate a neighborhood as a gated community with certain privacies that you don't have in a traditional community. Before you jump to conclusions, which are your own personal biases, you need to push your clients to do their own public search, and feel free to tell you and help you draw a circle around where they want to look for houses. During the showings, real estate agents just shouldn't even identify a room as this would be a nice nursery. This would be a great child's room for play. Look at this wide open space in the background to entertain for your family. Suggest that your client instead look at the community websites or social media boards that are readily available on Facebook, Instagram, etc. And they should then make their decision based on whether or not that community is putting activities in place that suit their needs. Sorry, animal lovers, but you are not a protected class. So whether you're a dog lover, cat lover, or an alligator lover, that is not going to be a discriminatory conversation. However, service animals are new to the scene and need to be respected in your conversations. So question like from your client, is my service animal acceptable in this rental? Or does this community allow service animals in the local grocery stores, etc.? Clients questioning whether or not that's allowed are typically in that rental or multifamily building conversation, but U.S. Department of Housing defines a service animal as any animal that works and provides assistance to perform tasks that benefit a person with a disability. Assistance animals might provide some emotional support that help alleviate the effects of a personal disability. And those assistance animals are not necessarily considered pets. So there's a gray area there where landlords and property owners, and those of you that are helping manage property services, you may not refuse housing, and you must provide reasonable accommodations for any person of disability, including the allowance of service animals if that's what they require. Obviously, agents must be aware that although a service animal is accepted and properly documented, a landlord does have the right to deny housing based on other factors that may not have been met. So if they're not meeting an income requirement, they cannot in turn be upset as a customer because I have a service animal. That must be why they're not accepting my application. You must be open and very transparent as to these are the primary qualifiers that the landlord has requested that you operate under before we even talk about your service animal. Alternatives, most of the time it's as simple as saying if you have a service animal, you can inform that there are factors based from the landlord's requirements, insurance, financial needs, etc. that must be met first. Instruct your clients to prepare their service animal documentation for the landlord or the housing association. That will certainly make it more acceptable. Unfortunately, service animals have been, the paperwork and the choices of service animals have certainly been abused or pushed the limitations of understanding for those people that need to be able to cooperate with you. So try to be patient. Knowing the service's animal size, weight, age, and breed will certainly provide a better feeling around the acceptance of bringing a service animal into someone else's home that you may be renting. So be prepared to have that information. Wheelchair accessibility. Disability is a big one. We talked about that earlier in our statistics. Is the building wheelchair accessible? Under fair housing, physical and mental disabilities are both protected classes. So you as real estate agents must make reasonable accommodations for individuals with disabilities to ensure equal access to all housing. Landlords have to do this by modifying a dwelling at times to allow better access. A landlord may have to install grip bars or ramps in a particular property to make it better accessible for those with disabilities. Real estate agents should know that landlords cannot always accommodate these needs, and according to HUD, a landlord can absolutely deny a request if the modifications that are required cause an undue financial or an additional administrative burden on the property owner that wasn't previously prepared. A perfect example would be to ask a building owner to install an elevator in a building from the 1920s that does not have the capacity for it. Additionally, an owner can deny a request for reasonable accommodation if the request was not made directly by the person with the disability themselves. So, easy alternatives to these: real estate advertising and marketing of properties must be inclusive of this. Do not include in your advertisement that a property is within walking distance from a neighborhood attraction, because walking distance for someone with a disability can be misconstrued as steering. Avoid asking your clients, what is your disability? Or answering the question themselves, are there people with disabilities living in the building? Instead, you as a real estate agent need to inquire about your client's particular needs, or what are their preferences on properties, so that the search that you're doing for them includes those things, so that it doesn't put additional complications for us to get a quick closing or a quick sale in place, or a quick rental application based on your client's needs. All right, that's good for examples. Let's walk you through now what you need to review on your advertising. Your advertising, your marketing materials for potential fair housing violations is a big one, and you need to be aware. If you're thinking, I wonder if someone could mistranslate this, they will. Change it. That's your rule of thumb. If you can perceive it differently, yes, this makes it very difficult for us to do our jobs. But if you can perceive it, if the language used by an agent in marketing and advertising for 1 second makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, you must avoid using it. Agents also have to avoid using certain words that can be discriminatory to protective classes. You got to be careful with your property descriptions, your website, marketing materials, and above all, your real estate advertisements. You have to be careful of that. Fair housing advertisement does have a phrase and words list that you can pull from the NYPA offline, and it's very easy to understand. Ultimately, keep your description about the property, never about the people or about the community. You want to eliminate those types of violations in advertising. Just make sure you always use inclusive language. Avoid stereotypes. Avoid generalizations. Follow the fair housing guidelines when you're creating your materials. Agents, when you are just running at the mouth on TikTok, you better know what you're saying. As a real estate agent, those social media posts that you're just throwing 15 seconds on the talk for, you have to understand those can get you in trouble as well. Agents need to be aware of the type of language that is used that can be perceived as discriminatory. Words and phrases that imply preference towards a certain race or religion or sex or family orientation are what cause this to be a problem. Ultimately, the vocabulary we have developed around discrimination and discriminatory practices is what has caused this. And let me give you some examples that you may not have even thought of. lots of storage space for Christmas decorations. Why is this a violation? For religion. You mentioned Christmas, which is immediately associated with Christianity. Alternative phrasing would be lots of storage for decorations, furniture, and other knickknacks. But do not be specific as to a type of ornamentation. Here's another one. Steps to the park. Walking distance to the library. This is a fair housing discrimination against disabilities. Walking in steps is not possible for everyone, so you have to be considerate of that. Change it. 3 blocks from the park. 2 miles from the library. Something like that. It's going to have to not, and just think of the worst Karen. I think Karen's still a safe word to use on the internet. Think of the worst Karen you can think of, picking apart every little thing you're saying. When you can get really good at avoiding that type of vocabulary, you will fix this problem and ultimately never have any of these risks. Let me give you another one. Low crime statistics in the neighborhood or safe neighborhood absolutely can violate all protected classes. Crime statistics are subjective and they are opinions and can absolutely constitute steering. I suggest you use something like picturesque neighborhood. I'll give you one more. Family friendly or great for families. Absolutely a discrimination against family status. You cannot discriminate against any of those practices of or without families. I suggest you use phrases like large backyard, parks nearby, additional guest room or additional bedroom, things like that.